Welcome to The Explainer. We've all spent years, maybe even decades, in the education system. But have you ever really stopped and asked, what's it all for? What are we actually trying to do here? Well, today we're going to deconstruct the whole idea of learning, from its deepest purpose to the invisible frameworks that literally shape our minds.
So, let's just dive right in with the biggest question of all. What is the real point of education? Is it to get a good job? Is it about making us good moral people? Or something else entirely? As we're about to see, some of the greatest thinkers in history had very, very different answers.
So one major way to look at it, and this is captured perfectly by the sociologist Emil Durkheim, is that education is basically a kind of socialization. The main goal is to shape us, the next generation, with the skills and the values that society needs to keep running smoothly. It's about making sure we become productive members and, good citizens.
But then, you have this really powerful counter-idea from the philosopher John Dewey. He basically said, look, if education is only about prepping us for some distant future job, we're totally missing the point. For Dewey, learning is about living right now. It's this non-stop process of rebuilding how we see the world through real, hands-on experience. School shouldn't just prepare you for society, it should be a mini-society.
Okay, so whether you're trying to shape a citizen or empower an individual, where does all this learning actually take place? The obvious answer is, in a school, right? But that's just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle.
Generally, we can split education into two huge arenas. First, there's formal education. That's the structured, graded system we all know. Preschool, high school, university, the whole shebang. But then there's non-formal education, and that covers pretty much all the other organized learning that happens outside that official system. And wow, when you put them side by side, the differences really pop. See, formal education is playing the long game. It's general, it's standardized, and it's all about getting that diploma. Non-formal education, on the other hand, is quick and specific. Think about a coding bootcamp or a public speaking workshop. It's super practical, it's tailored to you, and it just goes to show that real learning is happening everywhere, often with a totally different set of rules.
So let's zoom in a bit. No matter where it's happening, any planned learning experience pretty much boils down to three essential parts. You can think of it as a triangle. You have the learner, the teacher, and the curriculum.
Let's start with the blueprint, the curriculum. Now, this is not just a list of subjects to memorize. A good curriculum is the master plan. It answers the three huge questions. What are we actually going to teach? Why is this stuff important? And how are we going to teach it and check if it's working?
And that blueprint usually follows four really logical steps. You start with the objectives. What should the student be able to do when it's all over? Then, based on that goal, you pick the content. After that, you decide on your teaching methods. And finally, you use assessment to see if you actually met those original objectives. It's a circle, a constant feedback loop. Of course, a blueprint is totally useless without a skilled builder to bring it to life, and that's the teacher. Being a great teacher is about so much more than just being an expert in your subject. It means you have to be a lifelong learner yourself, you have to be a good role model, and you have to be incredibly adaptable. Because, let's be real, every teacher knows that being a part-time crisis manager is definitely in the job description. Okay, so we've looked at the big picture, the structures. But now let's get to what I think is the most fascinating part of all. What is actually happening inside our heads when we learn? How does information go from out there in the world to in here in our brains?
For a very, very long time, the main idea was that a learner's mind was basically a blank slate, right? An empty bucket. And the teacher's job was simply to pour knowledge into that bucket. The student's role? Just sit there and receive it.
This empty vessel idea, that's the core of a theory called behaviorism. It's all about the teacher leading and the student passively receiving. But then, in the 20th century, this revolutionary idea called Constructivism came along and completely flipped the script. It said, hold on, learning isn't something that's done to you, it's something you do. The learner isn't a passive bucket, they are the active architect of their own knowledge. So this is the crucial point, right? Under Constructivism, learning isn't like downloading a file. It's nothing like that. It's way more like building something with Legos. You take these new pieces of information and you actively connect them to all the other Legos you already have, creating these new, totally unique structures of understanding inside your head. A theorist named Jean Piaget gave us this brilliant analogy for how that building happens. He said we have these schemas, which are kind of like mental filing cabinets where we organize everything we know. When we learn something new that fits nicely into a cabinet we already have, that's assimilation. But when we come across something new that just doesn't fit anywhere, well, we have to build a whole new cabinet, and that's accommodation.
And building on that, Lev Vygotsky introduced this amazing concept of scaffolding. It's just like on a construction site. A teacher provides temporary support to help a student reach a little bit higher than they could on their own. They don't build the wall for them, they just hold up the platform so the learner can lay the next brick themselves. And then once that new piece of knowledge is stable, the scaffolding comes away.
So, okay, we've torn apart the philosophy, the structure, and even the psychology of education. But why does any of this matter outside of a college classroom? What's the real-world takeaway here?
Because this shift, this idea of being an active constructor instead of a passive vessel, it's not just academic jargon. It changes everything. It changes how we should design our schools, it changes how teachers should approach their students, and maybe most importantly, it changes how you can think about your own learning. Realizing that you are the builder of your own understanding is an incredibly powerful idea. It puts you in control.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Now that you've seen the blueprint, from the big why to the nitty-gritty of how our brains actually build knowledge, if you could change one thing about the entire system, what would it be?